London, 2008. A major international cricket tournament is underway at the stadium. The crowd holds its breath as a black helicopter appears in the sky, descending directly onto the field. Stepping out is American billionaire banker Alan Stanford. He walks confidently toward the VIP section carrying a mysterious black suitcase. Under the flashing cameras, he opens it dramatically, revealing $20 million in cold, hard cash. He promises to award this fortune to the tournament winners, leaving spectators absolutely thrilled. Journalists immediately publish sensational stories about the American tycoon conquering the world of cricket. Everyone believes this is part of an elaborate PR campaign for a successful businessman supporting international sports. The media portrays Stanford as a generous philanthropist and savvy entrepreneur. Little do they know, Stanford has staged this entire spectacle for a much darker purpose. His real goal is to boost his popularity among Britain's elite circles and lure them into his sophisticated banking scam. The show must go on, but time is running out. In reality, Stanford's fake financial empire has little time left, though the performance continues flawlessly. This is the incredible story of how one man built one of the largest financial pyramids in history, cunningly disguised as a legitimate bank. Through manipulation, charm, and elaborate deception, he managed to steal over $8 billion from unsuspecting investors worldwide. His victims included celebrities, politicians, and wealthy individuals who trusted him with their life savings. What seemed like a success story was actually a carefully orchestrated fraud. The 1980s, Texas, USA. Alan Stanford was born into an ordinary American family but harbored extraordinary dreams of making it into the world of big money. Young, ambitious, and audaciously confident, he started his entrepreneurial journey early in life. His first venture involved launching a network of sports clubs throughout Texas. He showed early signs of the charisma and business acumen that would later make him both famous and infamous. However, his initial success would soon face a devastating challenge that would test his resilience and shape his future path. Stanford's sports club business seemed promising initially, but disaster struck when the oil market crashed in the 1980s. This economic catastrophe plunged Texas's entire economy into a severe crisis, affecting businesses across all sectors. Stanford's company went bankrupt, leaving him with significant financial losses and shattered dreams. For many entrepreneurs, this would have been the end of their business aspirations. However, Stanford possessed a unique ability to see opportunity within crisis. Rather than accepting defeat, he began planning his comeback, determined to use the market instability to his advantage. Before starting the video, please, it will take 1 second. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much. Instead of letting the economic downturn destroy him, Stanford cleverly used the market instability to his advantage. He began purchasing real estate properties for next to nothing, taking advantage of desperate sellers and rock-bottom prices. His timing was perfect and his risk-taking paid off handsomely. After making a small but significant fortune from the crisis, Stanford made a life-changing decision. He decided to leave the United States entirely and relocate to Antigua, a small Caribbean island nation known for its lax financial regulations and business-friendly environment. In 1985, Stanford established Stanford International Bank, known as SB, an offshore financial institution registered on the beautiful island of Antigua. This location was strategically chosen due to its minimal regulatory oversight and favorable banking laws. Stanford immediately began working tirelessly to build an image of trust, stability, and legitimacy. However, his methods involved various fabrications and carefully constructed lies. He understood that in the banking world, perception often matters more than reality. His first priority was establishing credibility among potential high-net-worth clients who would become his future victims. Stanford resorted to elaborate fabrications to establish his banking credentials. He boldly claimed that his family had a long, distinguished banking tradition with an impeccable reputation spanning generations. This gave him immediate status among potential clients, as people naturally tend to trust such prestigious family histories. He even invented a completely fictional tale that his grandfather had allegedly operated a successful bank in the Caribbean since the 1920s. These lies gave Stanford the necessary aura of success and generational expertise, helping him attract his first unsuspecting clients to his fraudulent scheme. Initially, Stanford International Bank operated within legal boundaries, offering clients seemingly attractive conditions for storing funds and making investments. The bank's primary product was certificates of deposit, commonly known as CDs. These were popular banking tools that guaranteed fixed returns on deposited funds over specified time periods. While other legitimate banks offered modest returns of 3 to 4% per year, Stanford International Bank promised extraordinary returns of 10 to 12% annually. This was 3 times more than traditional financial institutions offered, creating an irresistible opportunity for greedy investors. The bank successfully passed all required financial audits during its early years, maintaining its facade of legitimacy. Stanford personally donated millions of dollars to various charitable causes, focusing on developing the island and enhancing its appeal to future bank clients. He projected himself not only as a smart, ambitious banker and successful entrepreneur but also gained a solid reputation as a generous philanthropist. His charitable contributions served a dual purpose. They helped the local community while simultaneously building his credibility and trustworthiness among potential investors who saw his public generosity. Behind this carefully crafted, respectable facade lay one of the biggest financial frauds in modern history. While Stanford appeared to be running a legitimate banking operation, he was actually orchestrating an elaborate Ponzi scheme that would eventually collapse catastrophically. His charitable donations and public appearances were all part of an intricate plan to build trust and attract more victims. The bank's impressive returns were not generated through legitimate investments or sound financial strategies, but rather through the classic pyramid structure of using new investors' money to pay existing clients. By the 2000s, Stanford International Bank had become a powerful symbol of financial success and exclusivity. Over 15 remarkable years, the bank attracted clients from 130 countries worldwide. Its impressive client roster included tens of thousands of people, prominent politicians, successful businessmen, and international celebrities. They invested their wealth eagerly, enticed by promises of stable income and elite banking services. The total assets of the bank officially exceeded $8 billion, making it one of the largest offshore banking operations in the world and establishing Stanford as a financial powerhouse. Alan Stanford's apparent success earned him recognition in Forbes magazine, where he was listed with a personal net worth of $2.2 billion. This prestigious recognition further enhanced his credibility and attracted even more wealthy investors to his bank. The Forbes listing served as powerful social proof that Stanford was indeed a legitimate billionaire worthy of trust and admiration. His inclusion among the world's wealthiest individuals opened doors to exclusive social circles and business opportunities. However, this recognition was based entirely on fraudulent financial statements and fabricated asset valuations. The secret to Stanford's success was his carefully cultivated strategy of exclusivity. This was not presented as a bank for ordinary people, but rather as an elite institution reserved only for the chosen few. Stanford masterfully created the illusion of financial security and stability, promising clients unique conditions unavailable elsewhere. He understood that wealthy individuals are often attracted to exclusive opportunities that make them feel special and privileged. This psychological manipulation was crucial to his scheme's success, as it made potential victims feel honored to be selected for his exclusive banking services. Stanford once explained his business philosophy: "The richest people in the world that we bring down here will be impressed and will do business with us. I am totally committed to growing our business in a quality way with high net worth people. Rich people do not get impressed very easily, so you have to do something unique that sets you apart." What we call the Stanford Standard of Excellence. This statement reveals his understanding of wealthy psychology and his deliberate strategy to target the ultra-rich through exclusivity and perceived superiority over traditional banking institutions. Despite promising annual returns of 10 to 12%, Stanford International Bank's deposits were not the result of well-thought-out investments or profitable financial strategies. Instead, it operated as a classic Ponzi scheme where new investors' money was systematically used to pay existing investors their promised returns. This created the illusion of legitimate profits while actually functioning as an unsustainable pyramid structure. Stanford knew this system could only continue as long as new money kept flowing in faster than old money was being withdrawn by existing clients. Stanford understood that attracting large investments required building an image of a successful, respected banker. He actively worked on crafting his public persona by showcasing an extremely luxurious lifestyle. He openly spent millions of dollars on private jets, expensive yachts, and magnificent estates throughout the Caribbean. His lavish spending served as visible proof of his supposed success and financial acumen. Potential investors saw his wealth as evidence that he must be generating real profits, not realizing that their own money was funding his extravagant lifestyle. Stanford sponsored high-profile international cricket tournaments, generously funded political campaigns, and donated substantial amounts to various charitable organizations. In the United States alone, his political donations exceeded $2.4 million, buying him influence and protection from regulatory scrutiny. These strategic investments in sports and politics served multiple purposes. They enhanced his public image, provided networking opportunities with influential people, and created a shield of respectability that helped protect his fraudulent operations from investigation. His name became associated with legitimate, positive activities rather than financial crimes. Stanford became a genuine celebrity, frequently featured on television as one of the world's most successful bankers. He presented himself as a benefactor supporting important social initiatives and charitable causes. Because people consistently saw his name associated with charity events and major sports tournaments, they became increasingly inclined to trust his financial business ventures. His media presence created a powerful halo effect where his charitable work and public generosity made his banking services appear more legitimate and trustworthy. This carefully orchestrated public relations campaign was essential to his scheme's success. Stanford's bank was widely considered reliable simply because it appeared to be successful and well-established. However, behind the impressive facade of luxury and influence, there was absolutely nothing of substance. Stanford International Bank did not actually invest client money in real assets or legitimate business ventures. The entire banking operation was an elaborate fiction built entirely on trust and false appearances. Stanford had created a grand scam that could only last as long as new clients continued bringing in fresh money to sustain the illusion. Although the first suspicions about the bank's questionable activities emerged as early as 1999, Stanford possessed the connections and financial resources necessary to avoid serious regulatory scrutiny. Government regulators turned a blind eye to mounting evidence of irregularities, possibly influenced by Stanford's political contributions and lobbying efforts. Meanwhile, clients continued investing millions of dollars, trusting in the bank's apparent legitimacy and impressive track record. The warning signs were there, but Stanford's influence and the complexity of offshore banking regulations allowed him to continue operating undetected for nearly another decade. Everything changed dramatically in 2008 when the global financial crisis struck with devastating force. Stock markets plummeted, banks failed, and investors worldwide panicked about the safety of their investments. The economic uncertainty caused massive volatility, with markets dropping over 16% and continuing to fall precipitously. Investors began desperately withdrawing their money from banks and moving their assets into more stable, secure investments. This mass exodus of capital would prove to be the beginning of the end for Stanford's elaborate financial fraud scheme. When Stanford International Bank's clients attempted to withdraw their deposits during the crisis, a shocking discovery was made. The money simply wasn't there. Mass withdrawal requests triggered widespread panic among remaining investors, and Stanford's desperate attempts to calm the deteriorating situation completely failed. Trust in the bank was irreparably destroyed as word spread about the inability to process withdrawals. People demanded their money back immediately, but the bank could not return it because the funds had been spent on Stanford's lifestyle and fraudulent operations rather than being properly invested. In 2009, the investigation into Stanford's financial empire became one of the biggest financial news stories in the world. A banking system that had promised its clients stable, reliable returns for nearly 2 decades was exposed as nothing more than a sophisticated Ponzi scheme. Both U.S. and Antiguan regulators launched comprehensive investigations into Stanford International Bank's operations. Within just 1 month of the investigation beginning, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission officially charged Allen, Stanford with multiple counts of fraud, securities violations, and investor deception. During the intensive investigation, the full scope of Stanford's fraud was revealed to a stunned world. Of the declared $8 billion in client assets, investigators discovered that only $500 million were actually real and available. The remaining $7.5 billion had vanished, spent on Stanford's personal expenses, fraudulent operations, and partial payouts to earlier investors to maintain the Ponzi scheme's operation. This revelation meant that approximately 94% of investor funds had been stolen or misappropriated through Stanford's criminal enterprise. On February 18, 2009, realizing that his arrest was inevitable, Stanford made a desperate attempt to flee the United States. He headed to a private airport in Houston, where a chartered jet was waiting to transport him to a country where he hoped to find refuge from American law enforcement. However, his carefully planned escape fell apart due to an ironic twist of fate. Stanford couldn't make the required payment for the chartered flight because the private airline demanded electronic payment processed through a bank account, but his accounts had been frozen by federal authorities. Unable to access his funds or credit cards due to his financial troubles and frozen accounts, Stanford's escape was completely foiled. Meanwhile, the FBI had been tracking his movements and learned of his escape plan. They systematically shut down all possible exit routes from the country. As soon as Stanford attempted to leave the airport terminal, federal agents moved in and arrested him. Unable to escape or resist, he surrendered without any struggle. His arrest drew immediate worldwide media attention, shocking the international financial community with the scale of his fraud. Stanford's arrest and the revelation of his crimes shocked the financial world due to the unprecedented scale of the fraud. In terms of total dollar amount stolen, this was the second largest financial fraud in United States history, surpassed only by Bernie Madoff's infamous Ponzi scheme. Despite the overwhelming evidence against him, Stanford continued denying his guilt and attempting to blame external circumstances. He claimed, "This was not a Ponzi scheme. Never in my life have I set out to defraud anyone. We never did anything illegal or wrong to the best of my knowledge." Despite Stanford's continued denials and attempts to shift blame to the economic crisis and other external factors, the evidence against him was absolutely overwhelming and undeniable. Many of his former employees, clients, and business partners testified against him in court, often reducing their own potential sentences in exchange for cooperation with federal prosecutors. In 2012, after a lengthy legal process, Alan Stanford was found guilty on 13 separate counts of fraud, conspiracy, and securities violations. The court sentenced him to 110 years in federal prison, one of the harshest sentences ever imposed for financial crimes. However, justice for Stanford did not translate into recovery for his victims. The thousands of people who lost their life savings never received adequate compensation for their losses. Out of the original $8 billion that was stolen, investigators were able to recover less than 10% for distribution to victims. This meant that the vast majority of Stanford's victims lost most or all of their investments permanently. The Stanford case serves as a stark reminder of how sophisticated financial frauds can destroy lives and why investor vigilance and regulatory oversight are crucial for protecting people's financial security.